Frank Costello was not born powerful. He was born in Italy, in a small village where poverty was louder than hope. When his family moved to New York, they arrived with nothing, just bags, clothes, and a fear of the unknown. Costello grew up in East Harlem, surrounded by gangs, broken homes, hunger, and endless street fights. By age 12, he understood one truth. In America, nobody gives you power. You take it. The streets became his classroom. Costello learned early how to talk, how to listen, and how to blend into any environment. While other kids fought openly, Frank used his mouth. He watched, he observed, he understood people. He didn't want to be a thug. He wanted to be the man giving orders. This ability to win without shooting would later crown him the Prime Minister of the Underworld. Costello joined a small Italian neighborhood gang. They ran errands for older criminals, delivering illegal alcohol, collecting small debts, or intimidating local shop owners. Costello wasn't the strongest, but he was the smartest. He kept records. He remembered faces. He knew who was lying and who was scared. The older men noticed him. They liked him. They saw potential in the quiet boy with sharp eyes. Everything changed the day Frank met Salvatore Charlie Luciano. Luciano was fearless, ambitious, and already connected to bigger players. Costello and Luciano clicked instantly. One had the brains, the other had the fire. Their partnership would reshape American organized crime forever. Together, they planned to modernize the mafia, make it less violent on the surface, more profitable behind the scenes. When alcohol became illegal, the streets drowned an opportunity. Where others panicked, Costello saw a gold mine. He organized massive bootlegging operations, importing alcohol, protecting trucks, bribing police, and creating safe distribution lines. While gangsters were shooting each other over bottles, Costello was negotiating, settling, and collaborating. He didn't want chaos. He wanted a business empire. Costello had a gift. He could walk into any office, police, politician, judge, businessman, and come out with a deal. His calm voice made dangerous things sound harmless. He bribed without appearing desperate. He threatened without raising his voice. Slowly, he became the bridge between the streets and the government. A gangster who could enter places no other gangster dared to enter. Unlike Capone or Schultz, Frank hated attention. He never wore flashy suits, never fired guns in public, and never walked with a loud crew. He preferred quiet restaurants, small meetings, and long conversations. This strategy made him invisible to most people, but deeply respected by the mafia. They trusted him because he was steady, calm, and always thinking 5 steps ahead. Politicians and mobsters began calling him the Prime Minister. Not because he was the boss of all bosses, but because he knew how to control things without shouting. He decided which politicians won elections. He controlled gambling networks in multiple states. He could make a law appear or disappear with one phone call. Behind every powerful man stood Frank Costello. Costello realized something others ignored. Gambling was cleaner, safer, and more profitable than alcohol or drugs. He invested in slot machines, casinos, and underground betting houses. Soon, Frank Costello controlled millions of dollars through simple coin-operated machines in bars and clubs across New York and Louisiana. Every pull of a lever sent money into his pockets. At one point, mayors, senators, and even governors quietly visited Costello at night. They needed money. They needed support. They needed votes from communities he controlled. Frank wasn't just bribing them. They were begging him. He sat calmly in smoky rooms, listening as powerful men begged a gangster to keep them in office. Costello had achieved the impossible. He controlled America without holding any official power. With Luciano rising in the Italian mafia, Costello became his political mastermind. Together, they reshaped the mafia into the Commission, an organized council that reduced bloody wars and focused on business and long-term profits. Costello's brain and Luciano's ambition created a criminal system that still influences American organized crime today. When police finally arrested Costello for liquor violations, they expected him to panic. Instead, he walked into the courtroom dressed neatly, smiling gently, speaking politely. Judges were shocked by how calm he was. His sentence was light. His reputation grew. He walked out of jail with more respect than when he entered. Costello never became the official head of the Gambino family. He didn't need to. He was the advisor, the silent power, the man whose opinions mattered more than bullets. Even bosses asked for his blessing before making big moves. Without ordering a single murder, he controlled the flow of money, the direction of alliances, and the fate of countless criminals. New York's mayor, LaGuardia, hated Costello's slot machines. He smashed thousands of them publicly. But Costello didn't panic. He simply moved the entire operation to Louisiana, where corrupt officials welcomed him. In months, he earned more money than he lost. His message was clear. You can't stop a man who thinks like a businessman. While Costello ruled quietly, another man was waiting in the shadows. Vito Genovese, a violent and ambitious gangster who wanted Costello's power. Genovese believed fear should rule the streets, not diplomacy. He hated Costello's peaceful style. He hated his political influence, and he swore one day he would replace him. Frank Costello rarely spoke in public, but when the U.S. Senate launched an investigation into organized crime, he was forced to appear on live television. Millions watched his hands tremble while he spoke softly, refusing to answer direct questions. Even without his full face shown, Costello became a household name. The American public finally met the quiet man who moved their politicians like chess pieces. Genovese made his move. One night, Costello was returning home when a gunman shot him in the head. The bullet grazed him, missing his brain by inches. Costello didn't fall. He didn't run. He simply held his head, bleeding, and walked calmly into his building. The message he sent afterward was chilling. I forgive, but I do not forget. Costello knew that continuing to fight Genovese would lead to a war that would destroy everything. He stepped down as the head of the crime family. He surrendered power, but kept his influence. Even after resigning, his voice still mattered. A retired king who still knew every secret and every connection. After stepping down, Costello lived simply. He preferred quiet afternoons, small dinners, and long drives. He continued advising politicians and criminals from the shadows. His influence didn't disappear. It became invisible. He still made millions through gambling, real estate, and strategic investments. Costello had one rule: never act out of anger. Even when betrayed, even when shot, even when insulted, he stayed calm. This emotional discipline made him unstoppable. He was the opposite of Dutch Schultz, the opposite of Bugsy Siegel, the opposite of Al Capone. He won through patience, not brutality. Frank Costello never bragged about money. He hid it quietly in real estate, liquor warehouses, gambling routes, and political deals. Most criminals showed off their wealth. Costello hid his. This made him untouchable. Even when police searched for his assets, they saw nothing. Everything was in someone else's name, yet everything still belonged to him. Behind every successful election in New York, Costello's fingerprints were quietly present. He controlled votes from Italian communities, Irish neighborhoods, and working-class districts. Any politician who needed last-minute support found themselves visiting Costello's apartment at night. Some were too ashamed to admit it. Others proudly served him like loyal soldiers in suits. While other gangsters operated from restaurants or clubs, Costello ran his empire from a small, elegant apartment in Manhattan. There were no guards outside, no loud meetings, no crowds. Just soft lights, thick carpets, and Costello sitting calmly with a drink. Deals that changed America began inside that quiet living room. Costello believed the mafia should behave like a corporation. No shouting, no street fights, no pointless killings. Just strategy, profit, and partnerships. He introduced business rules into an underworld that previously relied on violence. To Costello, murder was wasteful. Threats were clumsy. Influence was smarter. Costello didn't just bribe police officers. He controlled the men who controlled the police. He placed friendly judges on benches, funded campaigns, and protected key officers who protected him. A single phone call from Costello could make a raid disappear, a case dissolve, or an investigation suddenly lose its evidence. When New York became too hot, Costello moved half his operations into Louisiana. Governors, sheriffs, businessmen, everyone cooperated with him. His slot machines filled the state. His gambling operations became untouchable. Even religious leaders whispered his name in fear. In Louisiana, Frank Costello wasn't just a gangster, he was an institution. In New Orleans, Costello built a deep bond with Carlos Marcello, the dangerous but loyal Sicilian who ruled the South. Marcello loved Costello's calm style. Costello admired Marcello's discipline. Their alliance shaped gambling, politics, and organized crime across multiple states. Costello never needed to raise a gun. He raised standards. He raised expectations. He raised profits. Young gangsters watched him and learned. Power is not how loud you speak, but how quietly the city listens to you. Inside the mafia, two worlds formed. Costello's world, diplomacy, quiet deals, business. Genovese's world, fear, murder, domination. This ideological war shaped the future of the American mafia. It was the battle between intelligence and brutality. While Costello built alliances, Genovese built resentment. He wanted the throne. He wanted the influence. He wanted to erase Costello from history. Years of jealousy turned into a plan that would shake New York's underworld. On a quiet night in May 1957, Costello entered his apartment building. A man walked behind him. A gunshot echoed. Costello's head snapped forward. Blood dripped down his cheek. But he didn't fall. He didn't scream. He simply touched the wound, stared at the shooter, and walked inside. The hitman ran. Costello survived. The next day, the mafia listened for Costello's response. There was none. He simply retired from leadership. The city understood. Costello valued peace more than titles. But everyone also understood something else. Costello never forgot betrayal. After Costello stepped down, the mafia entered a new era. One filled with paranoia, violence, and reckless moves. Without his diplomacy, small disputes became deadly feuds. Old alliances collapsed. The balance he maintained for decades vanished overnight. While Genovese and others fought for dominance, Costello lived a quiet, almost peaceful life. He hosted friends, took long walks, attended dinners, and continued making money silently. He became the wise old voice everyone still sought for advice. Even enemies respected him. Federal agents targeted Costello relentlessly. He faced tax trials, gambling charges, and political corruption investigations. But they could never fully trap him. His network was too clean, his business too invisible. His fingerprints were never where they shouldn't be. Even though the 1951 Senate hearing exposed him, it also strengthened him. The public saw a man who spoke calmly under pressure. A man whose voice trembled but never broke. A man who was more businessman than murderer. It created a strange kind of respect, even among ordinary Americans. Even retired, Costello's opinions influenced the commission. Whenever a major decision threatened to divide the families, they asked, what would Costello do? His logic, fairness, and political mind continued shaping crime long after he surrendered power. New generations of mobsters admired Costello's clean approach. They studied his ability to talk instead of kill. They copied his calm voice, his careful planning, his patient strategy. To them, he was the professor of organized crime. Costello and Meyer Lansky worked together for decades. Lansky handled numbers. Costello handled people. Together, they built the East Coast gambling empire. Their partnership remained stable because both men valued order over chaos. Even though Costello told everyone he was done with crime, no one fully believed him. How could a man so deeply woven into the underworld simply walk away? But he did. He lived quietly, avoiding conflicts, avoiding unnecessary attention. His retirement became legendary, proof that not every mafioso dies violently. Costello's apartment became a pilgrimage site. Gangsters, businessmen, judges, politicians, they all visited, not to fear him, but to seek advice. Costello didn't run a crime family anymore. He ran something bigger. He ran influence. Costello's greatest strength was timing. He knew when to talk. He knew when to fight. He knew when to step back. This instinct kept him alive while others, braver, louder, more violent, were buried young. Genovese finally got the throne he wanted, but it didn't last. He was soon arrested, betrayed by his own men, and died miserably in prison. Costello lived free. He lived long. He won without lifting a finger. Costello's wife, Loretta, stayed with him through every arrest, every investigation, every danger. She lived quietly, rarely appearing in public. She protected Frank's privacy, offered calmness, and kept their home peaceful, a sanctuary in a violent world. On some nights, Costello hosted parties attended by influential men, governors, judges, businessmen, and even people from Hollywood. They came not out of fear, but out of admiration. Everyone wanted access to the man who could make impossible things happen. Even in old age, Costello's brain remained sharp. He remembered every deal, every name, every betrayal. He could predict political results, business patterns, and underworld changes with frightening accuracy. People called him a genius disguised as a gangster. Costello hated narcotics. He warned the mafia repeatedly that drugs would destroy everything. He believed gambling and liquor were manageable, but heroin was uncontrollable. His warnings were ignored, and decades later, everything he predicted came true. Even retired, Costello could prevent wars, settle disputes, and end feuds. One phone call from him could change the underworld's direction. He was the ghost that still influenced New York. Costello spent his final decades quietly. He gardened, read newspapers, hosted small dinners, and monitored the world from a distance. He didn't act like a former king. He acted like a wise old man who had finally found peace. Gangsters respected him for bringing logic to the mafia. Politicians respected him for understanding power better than they did. Historians respected him for shaping America without ever holding office. Costello proved a gangster could be smarter than the system. Frank Costello died of natural causes, something rare for mob bosses. No bullets, no knives, no betrayals. Just an old man closing his eyes after a long, remarkable life. The world barely noticed, but the underworld mourned. His funeral was calm, elegant, and surprisingly private. Quiet men in suits, criminals, judges, businessmen, stood together, paying respect to a man who shaped all their lives. No cameras, no drama, just silence. Costello's ideas continued shaping the mafia long after his death. Diplomacy over violence, business over chaos, influence over intimidation. These principles became the foundation of organized crime for generations. People still call him the Prime Minister of the Underworld. The title fits perfectly. He wasn't the loudest, he wasn't the most violent, but he was the most intelligent, and intelligence lasts longer than fear. Costello proved that real power is subtle. Not loud, not flashy, not violent. Real power is the ability to change things quietly. So quietly that people don't even realize you were the one behind it. For decades, Costello decided who would lead the city. Mayors, judges, senators. His influence reached far beyond New York, shaping laws and elections across America. Few men in history controlled as much without ever holding a title. By the time he grew old, Costello was treated less like a gangster and more like an old statesman. Powerful men visited him for wisdom, not for crime. his criminal past slowly transformed into legend. Half fear, half admiration. Many wars, betrayals, and disasters were avoided because Costello stepped in. His diplomacy saved the mafia from destroying itself countless times. Even enemies admitted the mafia was safer when Costello was in charge. Capone was feared. Gotti was flashy. Schultz was brutal. Siegel was reckless. But Costello was something else. Smart, patient, disciplined, strategic. He left a legacy deeper than any bullet ever could. Frank Costello will always be remembered as the man who ruled without shouting, who controlled without violence, who influenced presidents and gangsters with the same calm voice. A man who proved that the strongest gangster is not the one with the gun, but the one with a mind sharp enough to rule a nation from a small apartment.